All righty, we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. We'll probably have a couple more join us as we go. But I just want to tell everyone, thank you so much for joining us for our Outdoor Florida webinar this February. Today, we are being joined by 3 special guests to talk about public equestrian trails, both within Florida and nationwide. So we are going to get started today with Holley Groshek, who is with the Equine Land Conservation Resource. She is the executive director and has over 10 years experience providing counseling, technical assistance, and education programming on the topic of equestrian land protection. After we hear from Holley, we'll hear from our Florida representatives, Sue Noyes and Nancy Stevens. Sue is the vice president of the Southern Trailriders Association and has previously held roles as president of the Central Florida Paint Horse Club, chairperson of the Florida Recreational Trails Council, and appointee to the Greenways Commission, Florida Agriculture Center and Horse Park Authority, and later the Friends of Florida State Forest. Our third speaker, Nancy Stevens, is president of the North Florida Backcountry Horsemen. And Nancy rides trails all over the United States and has been involved with advocacy, planning, scouting, evaluating, maintaining, and educating on all topics related to equestrian and multi-use trails. So we're so excited to have all 3 of them here today speaking as our first equestrian presenters on our webinar series. At the end of our presentations, we'll have a question and answer portion. So please hold all your questions until then, or you can go ahead and put them in the chat as we go, and we will read them at the end of the presentation. So with that, we are going to get started with Holley. If you want to go ahead and share your screen and take it away, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, for the introduction and for the opportunity to be part of the Florida webinar series. I've been asked to kick off this Equestrian Trails webinar by providing a national perspective on behalf of my organization, Equine Land Conservation Resource. And I'll be focusing most of my comments on advocating for horses and promoting equine access to trails. I thought I would start by introducing my organization and our work related to equestrian trails, and also share what we see as some of the emerging issues potentially impacting equestrian trail access and what we are doing to help mitigate the impact of these issues. So ELCR is the only national organization dedicated to conserving land for all horse-related activities. So obviously our scope of work goes well beyond equestrian trails. Our mission is to lead in the protection and conservation of lands for the horse and horse-related activities. We fulfill our mission by providing counseling and TA to those working on local horse land issues. We advocate for equine access at the national level and support advocacy at state and local levels. And one of the main things we're concerned with in our organization is developing educational resources on land conservation, what we call our 6 core conservation areas, to support the efforts of those advocating for horse lands in their local communities. So I want to show you how you can get access to our resource library. If you go to our website, which is www.elcr.org, you'll land on our homepage, and this is a screenshot of our resource library. As you can see, it's broken down into our 6 core areas of conservation resources. So for horse access to equestrian trails, you would go here to equine access to public lands, or possibly equine access to private lands as well. We do try to draw people's attention to this area of benefit horses to our communities. Because when we're talking about gaining access, we want to advocate for horses and show why horses are important to our communities. And specifically for equestrian trails, here are some talking points that I want to cover with you. Equestrian trails provide economic benefits to communities from horse ownership and horse keeping and agribusiness tourism opportunities. One important study I want to share is BEA's study that indicated equestrians are the 5th largest outdoor recreation group in the United States. That's pretty important and surprising to a great many people. Furthermore, research shows that our relationship with horses provide us with many physical and psychological benefits. Furthermore, equestrian trails and open space in general provide ecological benefits to our communities. And studies indicate that trails in our communities increase property values. However, urban sprawl threatens our horse-human connection in so many communities across the country. Equestrian trails are one way to help maintain this connection and the associated benefits horses bring to our communities. And I just want to touch upon some of our partnerships as how we deliver our resources and services. We have a network of local, state, and national equine and conservation organizations as part of what we call our Conservation Partner Program. This program keeps us connected and serves as a conduit between ELCR and over 1 million horsemen and women across the country. Our partnerships are very vast because we go beyond trails. We do partner with the breed associations across the country, as well as discipline organizations like USEF, the Hunter Jumper Association, Dressage Federation, Masters of Foxhounds, for example. But in terms of trails, our strongest partnerships are with Backcountry Horsemen of America, American Quarter Horse Association, American Trails, and American Horse Council. And you'll hear me talk about Backcountry Horsemen throughout my presentation because they are one of our strongest partners in regards to trails. BCA does a wonderful job in maintaining relationships with federal agencies, land managers, and keeping track of legislation at the national level. This gives us the opportunity at ELCR to focus a little bit more on trails in and around urban areas, as well as private trail systems. And also we have good relationships, obviously, with the state horse councils and local groups around the country. So just to talk about emerging issues that we see impacting equine activities, I'm only going to highlight two in the interest of time. The first is the impact of COVID. We know from national statistics that there's been a dramatic increase in outdoor recreation and trail use among all user groups, including equestrian. And you probably don't need to see those national statistics. Many of you are experiencing this in your own community when you're out in the trails. Unfortunately, the result is crowded trails and a potential for increased conflicts between user groups. Another impact from the COVID pandemic has been a migration from urban to more rural areas, resulting in increased pressures on horse land and horse keeping in general. And the other issue would be emerging technologies such as e-bikes, hoverboards, etc. And we don't know what's going to come on down the line in terms of emerging technologies. Many of you are probably already encountering e-bikes when you're out on the trails. We know these two issues are kind of here to stay. So what we're doing is we are taking a strategy for advocating for horses combined with education. So it's aimed at educating land managers and other recreational user groups about the special needs of equestrians to protect equine access and support positive recreational experiences. Obviously, we're the only user group out there that's recreating in partnership with an animal, so that presents some unique challenges. So what I want to do here is just highlight 4 partnerships we're working on to help mitigate the impact of these issues, focusing on improving trail relations between user groups, maybe even expanding trail access as well. The first 3 are partnerships with multi-user group organizations, and the last one is just focused on equine. So the first one is the Coalition for Recreational Trails. It's an alliance of national and regional broad spectrum trail related organizations. Both ELCR and BCH represent the interests of the equine community on issues such as e-bikes on public lands and work to support CRT's efforts to reauthorize and expand the recreational trails program. For anyone unfamiliar with RTP, the program uses federal gas tax from off-highway recreationists to support trail development and maintenance projects in participating states. And I do have links to what I'm going through here now. My understanding is all participants will get a follow-up email with a link to the recorded webinar, and I'm going to include my PowerPoint presentation in there so you don't have to scramble and write down these links. The second initiative is a newer initiative. Some of you may have heard of this. It's Trails Are Common Ground. It was established in 2021, and both ELCR and BCH have served on the steering committee from the onset. And again, it's another coalition of multi-user groups but this is specifically aimed at elevating the importance of respectful, inclusive, safe, and enjoyable experience on trails for everyone. And this is a great opportunity for us to advocate for horses and really educate the other user groups about the unique concerns and considerations that we need as equestrians. The third partnership is with American Trails, again, another multi-user initiative. We routinely organize equestrian trail-related webinars in partnership with American Trails. So if there are any webinar topics that you're interested in us looking at, I'm going to have my email address at the end of this presentation. Please reach out to us. We're always looking at topics that would be of interest to the general equestrian community. And I also want to put a plug in for their International Trails Summit. Happens every 2 years. It's going to be the week of April 17th in Reno, Nevada this year. And on the 17th, the morning of the 17th, there's going to be a Horse Trails Caucus. If you're interested in that, please shoot me an email. I can get you the contact information. I want to mention one specific program that's relatively new with American Trails. It's the Trails Move People program. ELCR and both BCHA are active in this committee. It focuses on developing the funding and support of trails on the national, state, and local levels that will more effectively allow trails to connect urban centers with spine trails connecting entire regions. So this is a focus on connectivity. And I'm pleased to announce that 2 funding programs have come out of the Trails Move People initiative. The first is the Trail Capacity Program. This focuses on trail maintenance, research, and stewardship training projects. Last year was their inaugural year of funding projects. And the second one is a newer program called the Legacy Trails Program. And of course, if you go to this link, you can find out more information about each of these funding opportunities, applications, and deadlines. And the last initiative, this is actually equine focused, is the American Horse Council Recreation, Trails, and Land Use Committee. Both ELCR and BCHA are represented on this committee. And it's closely aligned with the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable. If you haven't heard of ORR, that is a lobbying group that works to educate Washington on the importance of the recreation sector. Not only the health and welfare benefits it brings to American citizens, but also the economic impact of our recreation industry. And here's just a couple things I want to highlight that the committee has been working on. The first is the horse stock camp issue. Some of you may or may not be familiar with this issue. It's an issue of people, non-stock owning people, actually campsiting on stock campsites on public lands. And why this is a problem is my understanding is out of all the public land at the federal level, only 5% of the campsites have the capacity for stock. So it isn't a huge resource to begin with. And if you have non-stock people getting into these campsites, you have the issue of the horse people coming and either getting there and they can't get in or they can't make a reservation. It becomes very challenging for them. So what this committee did is we met with the U.S. Forest Service to develop a white paper entitled Best Management Practices for Managing Equestrian Use Sites at Developed Campgrounds. This is an important resource, and here's a link to it. You can use this if you're encountering this issue. You can use this when you meet with public land managers, agencies, to look through some ways of mitigating and coming up with some good solutions to this issue. Also on this link, there's an incident report form, and we're really encouraging folks, if you see this at the local, state, or federal level, you encounter this problem, please report it to us because we're really trying to find out across the country where the most important parts of this problem lie, where are the issues across the country. So that would be extremely helpful. I think maybe Nancy or Sue might be able to touch upon this topic, how it relates specifically to Florida. The next is the National Trail Directory. Realizing that since COVID, we have more activity on trails than ever before in this country, we thought it would be important if we could develop a trail directory indicating horse trail friendly trails across the country. So that is now up and ready. And then lastly, one of the things we've been doing in this committee is monitoring proposed legislation that could impact equestrians. An example is Backcountry Horsemen at our last meeting this past Friday brought up biking on long distance trails, the alt proposed legislation. And this is something that we really do want to support. We feel the bikers have the right to have access to long distance trails. I think they're normally like 80 miles or more. The equestrian community has it. We'd like to see the same thing for the bikers, but with a caveat. We want to educate legislators to encourage agencies to take a hard look at any potential impact on existing user groups at proposed sites for this project. Because we know when trails get busier, overcrowded, it seems like the equestrians are one of the first groups that do get displaced. So I just want to leave you with this at the end of my presentation is advocacy is the key to access. When I work with these partnerships with multi-user groups, what I continually encounter is these other groups, the other recreational user groups, seem much better organized than equestrians. So we need to do better. I'm going to encourage everybody to remember to stay connected, join an equestrian trail organization like the two groups that will be following me in these presentations. It's really important that they have your support and that we can hear from local groups like this across the country, and for you all to remain connected at the local, state, and national level, because for us to effectively advocate for equine access, we need your voice. And I'm just going to give you here my contact information. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, you want information on the Equine Caucus, if you would like to suggest some topics for equestrian webinars in partnership with American Trails for us, or if you want a copy of my PowerPoint presentation. And that's it. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over.
Great. Thank you so much, Holly. That was a really great presentation with a lot of resources that people can look into, both trail managers and trail users. So I will be attaching Holly's PowerPoint to our follow-up email. So if you wanted to check out those links, you'll definitely have the option to do so. And I'm glad you mentioned the Trail Capacity Grant, because American Trails is one of our guests for our May webinar, and they'll be diving deeply into that. And I know several people in this webinar have signed up for that. So thank you so much, Holly. We'll have some Q&A at the end, so please stick around. Next, we're going to be moving on to Sue, who is going to present about the Southern Trailriders Association. So let me go ahead and get her PowerPoint ready.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about Southern Trailriders and equestrian trails in Florida. It has been a passion for a lot of the members in the club for years. Southern Trailriders is a nonprofit association. Next slide. And we were organized in 1990. Our mission is to promote equestrian trail riding in Florida, enhance the horse industry presence, and promote equestrian tourism. We have been planning, maintaining, and constructing trails for more than 30 years in Florida. We helped draft legislation for the Rails to Trails program and constructed the first separate equestrian trail on the Tallahassee to St. Mark's Rail Trail. We've been involved with the Florida Greenways and Florida Recreational Trails programs from their inception. And we have maintained and still maintain relationships with federal, state, regional, county, and city land managers. Next. Some of the projects that we have completed with agency partners locally are the J.R. Alford Greenway, the Miccosukee Canopy Road Greenway, and Phipps Park. Some state parks that we've worked with are Econfina River State Park, Lake Overstreet at Maclay Gardens, St. Mark's River Preserve, and of course the Tallahassee St. Mark's Rail Trail, as well as Wakulla Springs State Park. State forest that we've been heavily involved in, we did the Fort Braden Horse Trails, Pine Ridge Equestrian Trails, Wakulla State Forest Trails. In addition to these, we have been very involved with the Apalachicola National Forest, which is the largest national forest in the Southeast. It encompasses 4 counties, and we have put in we have 2 trailheads that we've been working out of, and we have Rivers Road Trails. We have 4 trails consisting of a total of 32 miles that we maintain. And we also have 18 miles and 2 trails out of Forest Road 362. Next. The Florida horse industry is a $6.8 billion economic impact annually and supports 244,200 jobs. We are the 3rd largest equine state in the nation. We have 385 resident horses in the state. Now, I want you to note that this does not include the horses that come down here with their people and spend the winters here. We have many activities here in Florida, equestrian activities, racing, roping, team pinning, hunter jumper, dressage, barrel racing, bronc riding, polo, halter, trail competition, carriage driving, endurance, mounted shootings, equitation, fox hunting, and trail riding. Endurance and trail riding require the most distance on public lands. An endurance ride can cover up to 100 miles in an event over 3 days. Next. The need for publicly accessible horse trails in Florida. Most important, it's chill time for competitive horses and riders. As one who has competed nearly all of my life, I can tell you that the trails were welcomed to me and my horse, and it gives a chance to get your mental health straightened out. Public lands are the only place to get the needed mileage for endurance and pleasure trail riding. And as Holley pointed out, it's the growth, it's people moving in. And here in Florida, trail riders have been closed out of their neighborhoods directly from their properties because of that. It's the buildings and the traffic. We maintain historic connection. We need to for the role of the horse in the settlement of Florida. After all, we couldn't have done it without them. Next. What to consider about sharing trails with horses? The very first thing is the most important. It's for everyone to remember that equestrians manage 2 brains, theirs and their horse. Horses are prey animals. They are leery of everything, and for them, survival means fast escape. They have to mentally process lots of things like speed, gait, color, sound. An object, is it going away or coming toward them? Size and shape. Horses react fast and loud before they think, and this is because survival is utmost. Horses cannot see directly in front or behind them because of the way their eyes are set on their head. Next. Safety tips when approaching. Southern Trail Riders has been actively engaged in working on this in our community for quite some time. The things that you do want to do is announce your presence or talk to the horse when approaching from either direction. And the thing we've come to realize is that a lot of people on bikes have bells, and instead of talking, they'll ring that bell. But that's not a substitute for your voice, because it can spook a horse. And if you speak, then they know that you're human and you're just on something. Always try to approach at slow speed or stop and ask if you can proceed, and communicate with the rider. If you see a horse is acting up, stop and give the rider a chance to get the horse under control so the situation doesn't escalate. And then there's a couple of things not to do. Most important, please don't stand behind a bush. The horse will think you're a predator. And also, don't barrel through with no communication. If approaching from the rear, it could cause a horse to spook to protect itself and kick out or bolt. Next. Enhancing public horse trails. If you're going to have equestrian trails, please get your local equestrians involved in the planning and development stage of equestrian trails. And here I would also like to add that in Florida, horses don't need shoes. And if the trails, multiple use trails or regular horse trails get erosion, excuse me, get your equestrians involved to help find a suitable substitute material to use to try to avoid putting rocks on the trails. And if you can't do that and you have to use rocks, please try to put a separate trail in the grass alongside the multiple use trail so that the horses could get off of it. Excuse me. Provide educational signage for unusual landscapes. Equestrians are very involved with the environment. Provide more equestrian camping for use by residents and equestrian snowbirds. Limit the use of equestrian campsites to equestrians. And as Holley pointed out, this is becoming quite a daunting thing going on throughout the nation now. Also, if you have trails where hunting is allowed, please post the dates for hunting and what types of hunting is allowed. Thank you. Excuse me. Also, keep the trailhead maps stocked well because you never know who's going to be out there riding. Provide single track trails where possible and make sure that the trail markings are kept up to date. And also, trails are used by other animals. And there's been many times that we've seen deer on them and everything. So anyway, that's just some tips that we can give you. If you want more information, you can reach me at www.southerntrailriders.org. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sue, for that great presentation. And I will include everyone's contact information in the follow-up email as well. So if anyone does have specific questions about Sue's presentation that you don't get a chance to ask today, feel free to reach out to her in Southern Trail Riders, as she mentioned. So next we are going to move on to Nancy Stevens, who is going to be representing North Florida Backcountry Horsemen. So I will go ahead and turn the floor over to you, Nancy.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. I really appreciate you all having the interest to be on this webinar this morning. We love to talk about trails, and so we're glad that you're here. Let me just advance this. Holley, would you advance that for me? There we go. So I'm with the North Florida Backcountry Horsemen, and we're just one chapter of many across the United States of the 50-year-old Backcountry Horsemen of America group. There are chapters in most every state, and our mission really is to make sure that public lands remain open to horses. Before I launched into getting in the weeds with you about the trails and parking and all of those things, I want to set the stage. And people probably don't realize this, but before equestrians even get to a trailhead, they've probably spent $100,000 plus or minus on their truck, their trailer, and their horse. So they want to make sure that they can get to the parking area safely, and they are not going to drop their truck in a big pothole, and their horse is not going to be late until they get there because of the access road. I'll talk about that a little bit more. The second point I want to make in launching into this is that equestrian trails are not expensive and they are not complicated. So if you want to provide an equestrian trail, please keep that in mind. We don't ask for a lot. Having said that, I'm going to talk about things that will make an equestrian trail go from a 1-star trail to a 5-star trail, just like hotel chains. So the first thing for us is parking and the access road. So the access road, if it's a 1-lane road that has two-way traffic, it's nice to have turnouts, because if a big rig meets a vehicle coming the opposite direction, we want to know that we're not going to have to back up a mile. So if you have turnouts, that provides us with a little bit of comfort there. As I mentioned, no big potholes. I've been on some trails in the West where by the time the horse trailer got to the parking lot, the horse was lame, axles broken, metal parts had come off the trailer. All kinds of things happen on bad access roads. So that's a real plus to have a good access road. We also have seen a trend in trailers in that they've gotten larger over the years. So where it may have been a small 150 truck with a little 2-horse trailer, you now have got 350 trucks, 3,500 trucks, and they're dualies, and they're pulling a 4-horse trailer that has living quarters, and it's got tanks on the bottom. So that's another thing to think about. Dips in the roads, we don't want to tear the tanks off. Okay, so now we've gone down the road and we've gotten to the parking area. It needs to be large enough so these big rigs can turn around, and the surface needs to be solid enough so that we don't get stuck. You also need to think about the size of the parking lot so that people can enter and exit without being trapped in there, and also the size relative to the use. So if it's near an urban area, you're probably going to have a lot more use, need a bigger parking area. If it's way out in a rural area, probably could get away with a little smaller parking area. We also would like clear directions. So when we're driving a big rig down the road and we're looking for a sign to a trailhead, we don't want to drive past it and have to find a place to turn around. It's not easy to turn these rigs around, as you can see by the pictures on your screen. Designation for equestrians. Boy, this has become a big deal as more campers particularly and more users are using these parking lots. When we have kids playing ball in a parking lot, it sets up A, the horses for getting frightened, and B, the kids for getting trampled. So there are good reasons on safety for having separate designations for equestrians and non-equestrians on parking. So parking is #1 priority. If you do it right, everything goes well from there. The next thing is signage. So trail markers are very helpful. A lot of this is dependent on the condition of your horse. So if you know that the trail is a 4-mile trail, that might be good for an old horse or an inexperienced horse. But if you know that the trail is 10 miles, you might not take that same horse down that trail. So trail markers, maps at the trailhead, the distance of the trails, and directional signs back to the trailhead are a plus. So once we get onto the trail, single lanes are great for equestrian only trails. For us, we love to not only ride our horse, but enjoy the nature around us. In fact, many of us have apps on our phones so that we can tell what the vegetation is that we're passing. But we like to have a mix. The 6 to 8 foot wide lanes for multi-use trails are good because it allows for passage of the horse and the bicyclist or the hiker without getting in each other's way. It also, from time to time, allows equestrians to ride side by side, although most horses like to ride one behind the other. And in Florida, as Sue said, most horses are barefoot. They don't have shoes on. And so the rock on the trail is a big deal for us because the horses can get their feet bruised, causing abscesses, which can cause lameness for months on end. And the rocks here that are put down is lime rock and has very sharp edges. The bigger piece, the worse it is. So in Florida, we like to have fine rock put on the trails when rock is needed. That's very different from out west. Out west, most of the horses are shod or people are using boots on their horses. And then the trail treads need to be stabilized. And by that, I mean, if there's a mucky area, you're not going to want to send horses through deep muck. If it's a fetlock, it's not a big deal. Up to the horse's chest, it's a major deal. So we want to make sure that we route the trail where the trail can support the horse's weight. And then overhead clearing, we obviously need more height clearing than a hiker would need or a bicyclist. And it's not just for us dodging branches, but a horse can get poked in the eye and leads to eye injuries. So we like to trim back the trail from the sides and from the overhead. And then we love to have diverse habitat. So sending us through an entire pine forest, when you've got some wetlands, we like to see the wetlands too. So we like to have diversity on the trail. Out in the West, most of the trails are out and back. And there's a purpose for that. They were generally taking supplies into hunting camps. But we actually prefer trail loops for two reasons. One is we see different scenery. And second is because the horses behave better on a loop trail. On a single trail, they know when they turn around, they're headed for home. And so they like to go faster. So trail loops helps us with that. The nice amenities are water on the trail. Not really a problem in Florida. We have a lot of water sources, lakes, streams, and that sort of thing. It is a problem in the Southwest, water on the trail. I remember riding in the Badlands of Wyoming one time, not thinking about the water, and I got 3.5 hours out and I go, oh my gosh, there's absolutely no place to get water for this horse. So in that case, I started carrying a lot of water bottles on my horse, and many of the water bottles were just for the horse. So water for horses is always a consideration, both at the trailhead and at the along the way. We like logs on the trails or beside the trails because we can use them for mounting blocks. We can also use them for trail training for horses to step over. And then signage to educate us about wildlife and plants because we like to learn about those things. Then equestrian campgrounds, gosh, they run the gamut from just a place to park and put up your own corrals to full barns to equestrian campsites with electric and water that have corrals attached to them. Bathhouse is always a plus. Again, this issue of non-equestrians reserving equestrian sites is huge nationwide. We can't go to another site in the camp, in the park, but other campers can. And we have so few equestrian campsites now that it's really important that those are left for us to reserve and not non-equestrians. Sites are preferred, but there are some people who like primitive sites, and so it's good to have a mix. Obviously, more electric and water hookups than primitive sites. And then RV dump sites are really important for those equestrians that are traveling through because they often can't go and dump at other places where campers can. And then a group pavilion is the nice plus. So you're seeing things on these slides that are a trail and a campground to a 5-star. And that's why I said it's not that expensive to put equestrian facilities in, because we can be accommodated by a 1-star or a 5-star. You'll just get more equestrians using it if you've got 5-star. So what attracts us to a trail? Beauty and uniqueness, real trails, not just administrative roads, like many of the parcels have administrative roads where hunters are also using those roads. That's not real attractive to us, but we understand if you use a mix of those and pathways, that'll work. But we ride animal trails, fire lanes, all kinds of pathways. And then enough space for all users to have quality experience. So the larger the property, the more you can lose other people and maybe not even see another user on this in the entire public parcel. So our first choice would be horse-only trails. Our second is hiking and horse. And our third is multi-use, which includes bicycles. Many people don't have the opportunity to expose their horses to bicycles, and they're terrified when they multi-use trail with bicycles. There are others of us that our horses have become conditioned to the bicycles, so it's not a fire drill every time we see one, but it really depends on the bicyclist behavior, and that's where that education comes in. So we've talked about mileage, we've talked about signage, stable parking. We want easy to find trailheads. And then in the rural community, we provide a lot of economic relief for rural communities because we use their restaurants, we buy fuel and supplies there. And then for camping equestrians, it's nice to have enough trail for 3 days of riding. So I would say that would be a minimum of 30 miles of trail. They can also use surrounding trailheads, but that does mean they have to break down their rig and pack up and go for the day. So they like to have enough trail on site. And then land managers should always encourage users to practice leave no trace principles on the trails that are established. Everyone do their part in maintaining trails. Equestrians should pick up their manure at trailhead parking areas so it's not unsightly. Leave their pens and stalls clean, and always be courteous to all trail users. I particularly try to engage bicycles in conversation because the human voice is soothing to the horses, and I also learn a lot that way and have a good exchange of information. So this provides the benefits of equestrian trails, promotes outdoor recreation. It's good physical and mental health for the person and the horse, maintains historic use of lands. And people don't think about this, but there are a lot of senior equestrians, and the only way they can continue to enjoy the backcountry is on their horse. So we're very happy that they can do that. I wanted to speak a little bit about a project that we have proposed to the state called the Florida Equestrian Heritage Trail. Our goal is to design not just a trail, but a system of trails using existing public lands and those that will be purchased in the future, and designate that equestrian heritage trail so that a person could go on a website in the state and they can plan an entire vacation, whether they're from out of state or they're in state, planning a staycation in the state of Florida, and they can go from trail to trail to trail all the way across the state, accessing the few equestrian camps that we have. Hopefully down the line we'll have more, but it would allow them to plan their trip, explore more of what Florida has to offer, and encourage the use of our fabulous public lands in the state of Florida. I don't know if that'll be a 1-year project or a 2-year project. We are now ground truthing the public lands so that if they say that you can ride, we want to make sure that the length is appropriate, that there's not a closed, locked gate, that there is parking. And so as we do that, those parcels will be evaluated for those various considerations and end up, hopefully all of them will end up someday in the Florida Equestrian Heritage Trail Network. So I will stop there and turn it back to Anna. And thank you so much for listening today.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy, for your presentation, and both of our other speakers for your presentations. I know we have a lot of land managers on today and a lot of land managers who will be watching our recording. So it's really helpful to have those tips to keep in mind if you're managing an equestrian trail. So we do have a little bit of time, about 10 minutes here at the end for questions. So if anyone watching live would like to put a question in our chat box, feel free to do that now, and then we will read them out. And to get us started, I did just want to touch on one thing, and maybe all three of you could answer in a way that would make sense. But if you're a land manager and maybe you're new in your position and you want to connect with the equestrian community around your trail area, is there a resource for that where you could find local equestrian groups to kind of get their input on things? Or what's a good way to connect with local equestrians if you're a land manager? And maybe we'll get started with Nancy since you just presented.
Yeah, well, the best source really is to go to the local feed store because they know everybody who has horses and they know all of the trail groups. After that, I would look towards the Backcountry Horsemen of America that can direct you to the local chapters in each state.
Great. Did Holley or Sue have anything to add?
I'd probably add the state horse councils because not every state has a backcountry horseman chapters. They're usually a good resource too.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, Sue, did you have anything to add?
Well, another source that they may want to talk with if they is veterinarians, because they'll certainly know who is has horses and what they use them for and everything.
Great. Thank you guys so much for that. We do have a question here in our chat box she wants to know, what is BEA? And I'm not sure who referenced that in their presentation.
That would be me. I believe it's Bureau of Economic Analysis.
There we go, Bureau of Economic Analysis. Our second question is there a website link for the Florida Equestrian Heritage Trail?
There's not one at this time. We're still gathering support. We've been talking with legislators, and we're hoping that this will be a state initiative. And one day there will be a web page with all this information in one place. But at this time, we're gathering support, educating people about the concept and our proposal. And I would say, I'm hoping that we will be successful this legislative session, but if not, we'll be back next year.
Okay, great. And then while other people are getting their questions together, I did just want to ask everyone who presented, how can people keep up with the work that your chapter or your organization is doing? Are you guys on social media, or do you have newsletters or emails that people can sign up for? And if Nancy, if you want to start with Backcountry Horsemen, how people can get involved with the North Florida chapter.
Sure, the best way is to go to Facebook, North Florida Backcountry Horsemen, and it's a private group, and that we just ask to join the group, and we'll allow you to come in. We want to make sure that people who are really interested in equestrian trails, so that's why. But that's the best way, and we have posted 29 featured trails in the state of Florida, has directions, the terrain, all kinds of information for people to learn more about the trails before they actually go there.
Great, thank you. Holley, do you want to share how people can get in touch with Equine Land Conservation Resource?
Sure, they can email me at Groshek, Groshek @elcr.org, and we'll make sure we get you added in our database, so you will get e-blast, monthly e-blast, to keep you up to date on what we're doing. And we also send out 2 printed newsletters each year. And you can also go to our website, and we have a section that says what's new. So any new webinars or educational resources we add would be profiled there.
Great. And Sue, how can people keep up to date with what's happening with the Southern Trailriders?
Okay, I gave they can go to www.southerntrailriders.org, and we're also on Facebook at Southern Trailriders.
Okay, great, thank you. We do have a couple more questions here. So first of all, Norma is asking, one of the challenges we've also experienced is increase of electric bicycles on non-motorized trails and multi-use trails in California. Are there any recommendations for deterring access to larger bikes but not horses? I've been told that using large boulders at trailheads may still be easy for horses to go over or around, but deter large bikes. And I would say that might be something to pose to a trail manager to work with them. But if you guys have any experience working with trail managers on how to manage equestrians and bike usage, feel free to chime in.
Well, I feel that if the pathway between the rocks is large enough for a horse, it's probably electric bike is going to be able to get through there. So I don't know if that would really be a practical solution to that. We're finding that we need to educate the electric bike users much more than we do the mountain bike users. Mountain bike users often belong to a group and they are educating their members, but electric bike users are often outdoor users for the very first time. And so they don't have the benefit of the background education. So it's a real challenge for all of us and something that we all have to take on.
I agree with what Nancy's saying. It's all about education, right? Because the e-bikes are going to be here to stay. And this is a long topic for us to just address in the last couple of minutes we have left. We are working with American Trails to do a webinar in e-bikes. So you can all keep checking on our website to see when that's posted. And I'm going to be trying to highlight some communities that have done some creative things and incorporating e-bikes in the trails.
We are also, in addition to e-bikes, we are also beginning to experience the hoverboards. And they, of course, they're so different looking. Horses can, get accustomed to a bike, but boy, when those things are on the trail, whoo. So we should think about that also.
Great, thank you guys for answering that. Our next question is someone who is in North Carolina, and they're asking, in mountain terrain with high rainfall, I've seen rock armoring as a solution for severe erosion. Earlier in the presentation, you mentioned other techniques for stabilizing trails other than rock. Do you have any suggestions for mountain terrain specifically, or suggestions of other materials that can be used for stabilization?
Well, I'm not that familiar with trails in mountains. Most of my experience has been right here in Florida. So I wouldn't be much help.
What we do see a lot is just like diversion for runoff areas. They might be little dips in the trail that are at an angle to make sure that the water drains off periodically so that it doesn't get up such a head of steam that by the time it gets to the bottom of the slope, that's a big river. So that would be one option. Water bars, I guess, is what you would call them.
I talked recently with some folks in Georgia and Pennsylvania that have some success using grid systems. So if that person's interested, they could email me and I could send them some information.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the feedback. And like I said, I will be sending out contact info in the follow-up email, so all that will be available to our viewers today. And then a follow-up question the same person had was, any known studies documenting challenges of e-bikes that are specific to horses that you guys have come across? I know that's still kind of an emerging field as e-bikes become popular. But if you have any resources specific to horses, this person was wondering.
I think we're too early in the game. We'll probably be the ones, all of us, that are writing that book. But it's too early. I haven't seen anything like that.
Okay, we are just about at our time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up for today. I just want to thank all three of you for being here and all of our wonderful guests who were able to join us today. This webinar was recorded and it will be posted on the Florida State Parks YouTube channel in the next couple days. So I will email a link in the follow-up email where you can easily access the recording to go back and check anything you might have missed. And if you have any further questions that we didn't get to, feel free to send those in an email to our presenters. They've all said they'd be open to answering more questions. So thank you so much. Is there anything parting that any of our speakers would like to say?
I just want to thank everyone for their participation. We're so glad that you have an interest.
I want to thank everybody also for participating and enjoy the trails.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.